Hey, remember this day, November 14, 2016. It's going down in history as the day Tucker Carlson premieres his brand new show.
And look, I'm no revolutionary. I'm not even really much of a populist. I've lived here all my life. But I do think that people who are affecting your lives ought to have to answer pretty straightforward questions about what they're doing. And so we're going to do that.
Now, I want to try something a bit different today and talk about Tucker Carlson. Tucker, if you don't know, is one of the most watched political commentators in America. He's been debating on TV for about 18 years now, and in that time he's become pretty good at it. He has channels on YouTube dedicated to his show, and these videos, typically in which he destroys or obliterates someone on the left, routinely rack up hundreds of thousands of views. So clearly there's a huge audience out there for people who like to watch him debate. After seeing many of these videos, I thought it would be interesting to take a look at exactly how Tucker wins these debates. I've noticed 7 techniques that he uses in almost every interview, which I'm going to share with you here. So keep an eye out for these the next time you watch Tucker, and hopefully being aware of these techniques will help make you a better debater, a master debater. Okay, so without further ado, let's dive into it. Number 1. Come prepared. The first thing I noticed about Tucker is that he often invites young or inexperienced guests onto his show to express an opposing view. Now, I'm not trying to attack his guests. I know it's kind of nerve-wracking to speak on live TV, but clearly some of them do not come prepared to debate. I think they expect a regular old interview because it looks like a news show and not Crossfire. So when Tucker starts challenging them, they don't know how to react. Watch how some guests struggle to articulate the central point of their argument.
Doesn't the country belong to its citizens?
I think that there are certain things.
I think you need to think
like
this through, Alex.
Slavery was a democratic.
Do you think that being a vegetarian helps defeat the patriarchy?
Well, wait, first, you going to read it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so then you
Come
have to
on.
take it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I eat meat.
Yeah.
How am I perpetuating the patriarchy by doing so?
Well, okay, there's several ways. One of the ways in which we perpetuate patriarchy is when we take up a little bit too much space.
Right.
Tucker also invites people like Kathy Aru, who is a recurring guest. She'll typically argue something that's kind of absurd and easy to refute. Here's an example. And watch Tucker's reaction here.
Why shouldn't girls be allowed to come to school topless?
Well, exactly. I mean, why are boys allowed on track teams to run topless and women are not allowed to be topless?
So, say what you will, but Tucker does his homework. He picks people he knows he can beat in a debate. He does research on them beforehand, and he prepares a line of attack.
Let me just ask you this. I know that you're a liberal, a radical, lefty. Look, I'm taking you seriously, and you're just repeating dumb liberal talking points. Be a socialist.
Debating less experienced people on your home turf is a major advantage. So the lesson is, come prepared to debate. Anticipate the questions that will be asked, and have some facts ready to go ahead of time. Number 2. Discredit your opponent. Before the interview even begins, Tucker will often take a shot at his opponent's credentials, so you're less likely to take his or her argument seriously. Watch how he introduces Bill Nye here.
Bill Nye, who is called the science guy despite being mostly a television entertainer.
Bill Nye, the psychoanalyst guy. During a Facebook Live event with Senator Bernie Sanders today, the mechanical engineer and TV personality said,
By calling Bill Nye a mechanical engineer and suggesting he's not a scientist, you might start thinking that he doesn't know anything about science. Other times, Tucker will question credentials during the interview.
You're using the language of politics. Look, you're not a scientist, as you know. You're a popularizer. Do you have a degree in the hard sciences?
I do have a degree in social and cultural analysis.
What's so
January
amazing is that
2005.
someone can start an environmental nonprofit with no science background. Do you think that's a little weird?
Are you really a professor, by the way?
What?
Are you really a professor? Because I feel like this may be performance art.
What's performance? No, I'm a professor.
Now, this could be considered a form of ad hominem, as he's attacking the person and not their argument. But, when done correctly, it signals to the audience that this person is not an expert, and their opinion should therefore be disregarded. Watch Tucker belittle Lauren Duca here for the articles she's written for Teen Vogue instead of taking on her argument.
Your description of the Trump administration, you wrote this piece in Teen Vogue, which I guess you write for.
Oh, which you guess I
said-
write for? Yes, that's not fake news. That's real news. I write for you guess. Oh, you guess, Tucker? You guess? That's really
I haven't
patronizing.
read Teen Vogue. I also read Liam Payne is 100% certain One Direction will continue. Adriana Grande rocked the most epic thigh-high boots at Jingle Bell, and Black China and Rob Kardashian went through the messiest breakup of 2016. Those are your other pieces. But I'm trying to get to what you're writing about Trump.
You can see how much he was able to get under her skin there. He also discredits the infamous Steele dossier by pointing out that it was originally reported by BuzzFeed, which should have no real bearing on its validity.
The FBI used this BuzzFeed document to justify spying on an American citizen. So I'm wondering, were there other BuzzFeed documents that are part of this? I want to put, like, this story. I read BuzzFeed, I'm sure you do too. 31 slightly weird things all girls do in the bathroom but don't talk about. That's a BuzzFeed story. Was that in any way part of this investigation?
Anything else you want to talk about that's like relevant to the fact that we know?
22 jokes you'll love if you're lactose intolerant but can't stop eating dairy?
Can we talk about the fact that this whole premise is twisted?
And check out this heated exchange with Max Boot. Again, keep in mind that Tucker doesn't actually challenge Boot's argument. He goes after his authority to make the argument.
And it's a little odd coming from you, who really has been consistently wrong in the most flagrant and flamboyant way for over a decade. And so you have to sort of wonder, like,
what have I been wrong about, Tucker? What have I been wrong about?
Having watched you carefully and known you for a long time, I recall vividly when you said that if we were to topple the governments of Afghanistan and Iraq, the region would be much safer, and the people who took their place would help us in the global war on terror. Of course, it didn't happen. I was there when you said that.
On me, Tucker.
I'm not getting holier than thou. I'm merely saying
you supported the invasion of Iraq,
you have been consistently wrong. You sort of wonder, like, well, maybe you should choose another profession, selling insurance, house painting, something you're good at. This is why nobody takes you seriously, but I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself.
Ad hominem attacks can be effective, but the problem is you can look like a bit of an asshole if you do it too often. But if you're able to attack your opponent's credentials in a subtle way, it can be a very effective method of sowing doubt in the audience.
You promise you're a real professor?
Yeah.
Okay.
What does it mean to be a real professor?
Number 3. Ask loaded questions and use red herrings. Another thing Tucker does is ask loaded questions that are hard to answer without appearing as though you're evading the question. Watch how he phrases this tax policy question to this professor.
So I just want to get to motive here for a second. Do you want the tax rate to go up to pay for more stuff, or as a way to punish rich people?
By framing his question like that, he puts her in the awkward position of either saying, yes, I want to expand government spending drastically, or yes, I want to punish rich people. Here, one of his guests actually calls him out for asking a loaded question.
So I looked up your bio, and it describes you as a senior writer at Newsweek, which suggests journalism. Do you believe that you're practicing journalism?
When did you stop beating your wife? What are you talking about?
What he's referring to here is a classic loaded question. The question is loaded because if you say yes, it sounds like you're admitting to doing it in the past. And if you say no, it sounds like you're still doing it. Another useful type of question is the red herring, or asking questions that are not really relevant to the topic at hand. You can use red herrings to get off of a topic, especially if your opponent has just given you a strong answer. Here's Tucker asking Bill Nye an irrelevant question about an ice age that will never actually happen.
Without human activity, how long would it have taken for us to reach this level of warmth in our climate? When would it have happened?
When would the next ice age have happened?
Yeah.
Is that your question?
Without human activity, what would the...
Here's another example of a red herring, this time with Rob Reiner.
I guess. I mean, I don't know. I mean, yeah, I don't like foreign countries meddling in our affairs. I don't like that you tailor your movies to the Chinese censors. Do you think the Russians have more influence in our country than the Chinese government, to which you routinely kowtow in your films?
But wait a minute. Why did you say that I kowtow to them in my films? I don't know what that means.
Because Hollywood films, as you know, would never have a flattering portrayal of the Dalai Lama, for example, because the Chinese government doesn't want it. You're not going to deny that, I assume, because it's true.
But you're saying that I censor myself for the Chinese. I don't do that.
Of course, China has nothing to do with Russia. But Tucker is looking for any kind of opening to attack Reiner. By framing your questions like this, you can confuse or disorient your opponent, as they will not be prepared for such a line of questioning.
But wait a minute. Why did you say that I kowtow to them in my films? I don't know what that means.
And while they struggle to answer your loaded question or red herring, they may appear nervous, unprepared, or overly defensive to the audience.
What are you talking about?
Number 4. Ask for specifics and claim the opponent didn't answer the question. Probably the most effective method Tucker uses, and he does this better than anyone I've ever seen on TV, is ask for very specific information and then not let his guest off the hook when they don't answer. Here he is with Bill Nye again, asking what percentage of climate change is caused by human activity, which is a number that Nye obviously doesn't have.
To what degree is climate change caused by human activity? Is 100% of climate change is caused by human activity? Is it 74.3%? It's settled science. Please tell us to what degree. To what extent is human activity responsible for speeding that up? I mean, please be more precise.
If that's the number you want.
Finally, Tucker gets him to say 100%. But it doesn't really matter if Nye had answered him or not. Regardless of what answer he gets, Tucker will accuse his guest of not answering the question, as you can see here.
My only point is, shouldn't we be encouraging people to ask honest questions, which I am doing, and you don't seem to have the answers to those questions.
Okay,
I think that you're humiliating yourself by your unwillingness to answer a simple question. So please answer it.
Out of time, Rebecca, but I appreciate your coming on, even if you refuse to answer a single question.
You're dodging the question that I have asked you repeatedly.
Putting people for Why don't you answer my question and stop with your silly lectures?
Answer my question! The question, jerk!
On a similar note, Tucker will use what they used to call gotcha questions. Watch this.
Reasonable person is actually a concept in the U.S. law. It's a concept that's used by judges and lawyers and other legal actors to make legal decisions.
I got 30 seconds. Define what it means.
A reasonable person is the average person.
Oh, the average person. The average, as defined by what? What does that mean, the average person?
The point is, listen, the point is that we have,
you can't define
we have a public health crisis.
Now, Tucker is not a dumb guy. Chances are he's heard of the concept of a reasonable person before. I took an intro to law class in college, and even I know what it means. But he knows that she can't define it well, so he keeps pushing her on it. He knows he's got her here, hence that smile. Now watch how often he repeats the question to expose his guest's perceived ignorance.
I'm asking you to define your terms, and you don't seem like you can. I'm trying to get you to define a term that you introduced into the conversation. Reasonable person, average person. I'm asking you a simple question. What does that mean? You can't answer it. You're changing the subject. And I'm just saying, you're the one who wrote the New York Times op-ed, but you didn't bother to think this through. I'm asking you to define what you're talking about. I'm not one of the children sitting in your classes who nods in bovine agreement. I'm an adult who demands an adult answer, and you don't have one. Okay, well, I could ask you for the 5th time what that actually means, but you don't seem to have an answer, which I think tells
I answered you. You just didn't like my answer. You didn't like my answer, and so instead you just lob insults.
But you said his ghastly appointees. Give me an example.
Anti-Semite.
Who is that? Who also
Pruitt today.
And what was his suit about? Do you know?
What
law was he contesting?
Standpoint. That is fact. That's non-negotiable.
Regulations.
That's non-negotiable.
Around
air pollution?
It's not. You can't name a single one.
Regulations. That's non-negotiable. Around air pollution?
It's not. You can't name a single one.
This is an extremely effective way of portraying your opponent as someone who doesn't know what he or she is talking about. The only way for them to defend against it is to either A, answer the question well, in which case he'll try to find another opening, or B, expose the question for being irrelevant to the discussion at hand.
I took seriously Brett's injunction to put aside the talking points, and I wish you would put aside the gotcha questions.
Most people do neither, so Tucker comes out on top. Number 5. Pretend not to understand their argument, or straw man them. Tucker often pretends not to understand his opponent's argument. This indicates to the audience that they're not making their point clearly, or articulating it well. Now, it could be the case that the person is making their argument very convincingly, but by claiming, "I don't understand what you're saying," you can make your audience question whether or not they fully understand his or her argument. This is a simple trick that goes a long way.
What are you saying? I mean, I don't actually even understand what you're saying.
Ratings are going up.
I don't even know what you're talking about, and I'm not sure I look forward to it.
What are you saying?
With
I'm trying to understand what you're saying. What does that even mean?
things.
The air pollution? I don't even know what you're talking. I'm not following you.
Are you
because I'm not a college student.
That's a very ominous thing to say. I don't know what it means, but come back anytime.
It's also a good way to dodge a question. Just say you didn't understand it.
I'm not even sure what that question means, but I will say this.
Do you? Or you can pretend to be confused and repeat their argument back at them, making subtle changes in an effort to make it easier to refute, also known as a straw man.
What does that even mean? Like, why don't you tell? I mean, she's anti-woman because he wants to defund Planned Parenthood.
I'm sorry, is that what I said? I think my earpiece might not be working because that is most certainly not what I said.
Okay. You're telling other people to send their money to the government, and you're not. So, like,
I'm telling the top 1%. No, Tucker, don't put words in my mouth.
So critic. Who disagrees with the received point of view that you espouse is not a legitimate critic.
No.
So all regulations are good, and anyone who challenges them is an accomplice to Hitler's rise.
This is what Kathy Newman famously tried to do to Jordan Peterson, with really bad results. That's because she went to the well a little too often.
But you're saying that makes them unhappy?
No, I'm not saying that.
You're saying it's because women are too agreeable to ask for pay rises. You're saying that women aren't intelligent enough?
No, I'm not saying that at all.
You have to use this technique sparingly, or it will become blatantly obvious to the audience. Number 6. Insult your opponent. When all else fails, take digs at your opponent to get under their skin and knock them off their game. Tucker does this all the time in a blink and you'll miss it sort of way.
Opposed to Trump were, I don't know, the hedge fund managers and privileged people like you. Did you ever think to yourself, like, why is the middle class...
To dismiss anyone who doesn't share your view as a Nazi sympathizer seems cheap and a shortcut and not really befitting a self-described genius like yourself. Why would you say something like that?
It's much more complicated than you and other sort of glib apologists for racism suggest that it is.
California,
come on, don't be a robot. Give me a real answer. Come on.
Absolutely.
You're being like a liberal robot. You are a demagogue who is not actually... No, he didn't. One question before you make another stupid generalization. No, don't give me that dumb answer. You're demented, actually. You're sick. And what you're saying is disgusting.
You are fundamentally unreasonable, and the position you are taking is an inherently racist.
You're making a case for censorship, as you know, but you're too disingenuous to admit it. Do you realize that you're going insane on TV right now?
It's the fact that hundreds of American troops...
You're humiliating yourself, Max. It's almost impossible to have a conversation with you because your responses are so childish.
It's so frustrating to talk to someone as dumb as you, but let me just try to pinpoint what you're saying.
Ironically, Tucker will often accuse his opponent of name-calling or trying to silence a debate.
What is not legitimate and what does not lead to fruitful conversation or solutions is name-calling, and that's what you're doing.
Again, his strategy entirely depends on the type of debate he's in. Watch this clip and tell me if Bill Nye is shouting him down, as Tucker claims.
So then, before the name-calling begins and before you try to end the conversation, let's start it. You don't reach correct conclusions in science or politics or any other field unless you can ask honest answers without being shouted down by people like you.
But I know what you mean. That's how
so
the
much
world
of this
would be
you
different
don't
if it
know.
weren't for humans.
You pretend that you know, but you don't know, and you bully people who ask you questions.
I really have to disagree with you. What? The evidence is overwhelming. Don't get me wrong. I love you as a person more than life itself, but the evidence for climate change is overwhelming.
So I think it's pretty obvious that Nye wasn't name-calling, bullying, or trying to shout him down. But by suggesting that he was, there's a good chance that a certain percentage of Tucker's audience will walk away with the impression that Nye was a bully.
I disagree with you, sir. I really have to disagree with you. I spent a lot of time with this topic.
I'm open-minded. You are not.
So why is it so effective to insult your opponent and call them dumb? Tucker breaks it down here.
If I were to say your ideas are so stupid, hold on. If I were to say your ideas are so stupid, they're not really ideas, therefore we don't have to listen to them or debate you, what I'm doing is trying to silence you. I'm trying to put you outside of the pale, and that's exactly what you're doing.
Number 7. Get the last word. The end of the interview is what's most likely to stay in the audience's head. So try to get in the last word, or frame the debate as you saw it. Tucker often tells his guests just how badly they did, which will leave the audience with the same impression.
Because they are. I'm sorry, we're out of time, Kurt, and I don't mean this in a cruel way. I would have real concerns if I were one of your editors, and I mean that. I'm not calling anyone a liar, but I am saying I'm concerned about your behavior on this show tonight.
Okay, because I don't think that you believe in debate. You don't want to hear ideas that you disagree with. I'm sorry.
If I didn't believe in debate, I wouldn't be on your show.
You didn't do a very good job, with respect.
But you are incapable of giving a factual answer, and so instead you attack the character of the person who asked the question. And I and I think our viewers can see that,
Tucker,
and it's beneath contempt.
I did not.
Max,
I did not attack
I gave you a chance,
what you were saying
and you
was
did
immoral.
not turn in in any sense, impressive performance. Thanks for joining us anyway. I thought it was interesting.
Bigoted,
those pieces were a little smarter than your piece about threatening the sovereignty of a whole religion. All right, I got to go. You should stick to the thigh-high boots. You're better at that. Lauren, thanks for joining us.
So then, what can we conclude about this? I think ultimately that Tucker is such a good debater because he cares about winning, and he's willing to do whatever it takes to win in the eyes of his audience. He's not an ideologue, and he's not doctrinaire, by his own admission, so he's not trying to push a political agenda for the greater good.
They don't always have to agree with my politics. My politics are so complicated that I don't even understand my own politics a lot of the time. Yeah. I have libertarian instincts, but I also have all kinds of views that are in conflict with one another. I mean, I guess I'm not very doctrinaire is the point I'm making. And I'm certainly willing, especially as I get older, to admit that I don't really know the answer to some questions.
It reminds me of this classic scene from Thank You for Smoking. It's not about what you're arguing, it's how you argue.
But you didn't prove that vanilla's the best.
I didn't have to. I proved that you're wrong. And if you're wrong, I'm right.
But you still didn't convince me.
It's that I'm not after you. I'm after them.
And that is how he wins debates.